Thousands of educators, parents, and supporters traveled to the state capitol Monday to press their case for greater education funding and a boost in teacher pay. Lawmakers who attended the rally are sympathetic, but warn that $611 million in a budget hole makes finding more dollars for education this year unlikely.
Fund us now. Fund us now.
Oklahoma's teachers are among the lowest paid in the nation, and many of those who attended the Capitol rally want to make sure lawmakers know it. It's been more than 7 years since the legislature gave an across-the-board salary increase to teachers. Edmond public school teacher Jamie Minter believes lawmakers have neglected education.
It's always an excuse, whether it's the oil prices are down or, there's just not enough tax money coming in. There's always an excuse. And until they decide that there are no more excuses, make it the top priority, we're going to be here.
House Minority Leader Scott Inman exhorted the crowd to demand that legislators make schools their top priority.
Even though we recognize that these are tough budget times, the legislature must do more than pass another flat education budget, or worse yet, pass another budget that cuts funding for our schools. If your leaders share your priorities, then they will find a way to increase education funding, and they will find a way to do it this year.
Oklahoma's per pupil spending of $8,729 is the third lowest in the nation. The average annual salary for Oklahoma teachers is $44,549, ahead of only Idaho, Mississippi, and South Dakota. That's contributed to Oklahoma being short about 1,000 teachers. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Joy Hoffmeister says addressing that teacher shortage and improving Oklahoma's education outcomes are her top priorities.
If we want to lift out of the bottom of these lists that we find ourselves on repeatedly, we must change the behaviors and the priorities and the policies that got us there. My plan is to raise teacher pay to the regional average and extend the academic calendar to the national average.
Shortly after taking office, Hoffmeister unveiled a plan to increase teacher pay by $2,000 while extending the academic calendar year by 5 days over 5 years. Hoffmeister requested an additional $205 million this year to pay for the plan, but admits finding the money will be difficult.
How we begin that process certainly needs to be adjusted because of the budget shortfall, but that doesn't mean we can't start.
She believes some funds could be made available by ending certain tax incentives and reducing state-mandated testing.
I think there's also ways to look within our own common education budget and better use dollars and instead steer some dollars that we're using right now for testing and for other areas where we could shift that and reallocate toward a teacher pay increase.
Hoffmeister says failing to address the funding problem will only make the teacher shortage worse, adding education can't afford another budget cut.
A 2% cut would double our teacher shortage, and there's just no way around that.
One idea to provide more funding came from State Representative Lee Denny, who introduced a bill to increase funding for education by $60 million each year beginning in 2019 if revenue is projected to grow by at least 1%. The money would be taken off the top of the General Revenue Fund before lawmakers appropriate money for other state services. Denny says the plan is modeled after the State Transportation Department's Roads Fund.
I think it's really helped stabilize our road funding program here in Oklahoma. We had many deficit roads and bridges, and this funding has stabilized that. And you see orange cones all over the state in that they are fixing projects that have long overdue and needing fixing. And my idea with this bill was to do the same thing for education.
Denny's bill never got out of the House, and House Appropriations and Budget Chair Earl Sears blames the budget shortfall.
I support that initiative 100%, but that's part of the problem is these apportionments off the top. The timing on what Representative Denny wants to do, the timing could not be worse. That is about $600 million over a period of years that would come off the top, and we just can't do that right now.
Oklahoma Policy Institute Executive Director David Blatt says another avenue lawmakers could take to increase education funding is to delay the tax cut scheduled to take effect in January of next year.
They passed the tax cut last year saying that it'll only come into effect if revenues were growing. Revenues are falling. We have a $611 million shortfall. They need to at least stop this tax cut.
But Sears says that option is off the table.
The taxpayers of this great state, as far as I'm concerned, is just like any other state agency. It is their money, hard earned money, and I will always support a modest tax reform and a return of tax dollars to the citizens.
Sears says lawmakers are trying to shield education from cuts, even if it means deeper cuts for other state agencies.
If we do have to make a cut, the smallest cut that we will make to the budget will be to public education, but quite frankly, all of us are working extremely hard to keep education flat this year.
Budget negotiators hope to finalize the state education budget by April 30th.